Hey everyone, welcome back to another Taiko talk here on Tic Tac Taiko. A few weeks ago, the 2025 North American Taiko Conference, or NATC, wrapped up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had a blast. I got to meet a lot of new friends, make a lot of new contacts. I got to see people I haven't seen in years, and I got to teach a lot of workshops, and it was exhausting, and it was tiring, and it was so much fun. Now, the prior 5 conferences, I was hired to do some survey work and data analysis, but not this year. However, there was publicly available information, and I dove right in and I pulled up some interesting things. And then I realized something. There have been 12 North American Taiko conferences over the last 28 years. 14 if you include the 2 regional ones that happened a few years ago. Across those 12 conferences, there have been 138 workshop instructors, 569 individual workshops. And that's a lot of data. And it hit me. I don't think anyone has looked into the NATC as a series, as a whole. And that's what I did. And that's what this video is all about. So, given that this information that you're about to see was known by no one, seen by no one, heard by no one, these are technically the secrets of NATC. I do want to say that almost all of the information that I dove into is or was publicly available. I have access to some information that you don't. I'm using a little bit of it, but most of this is available to everyone. But Adam, I hear you say, why on earth would you do this? What's wrong with you? Well, as for the second question, I don't know. As for the first question, I believe that more information is always better than less. 2, I think that knowing how much information is possible to gather, how many variables you might look at, will help people who attend NATC in whatever fashion understand there's a lot of factors that can go into making certain decisions. So you might have valid critique, but I think it's really good for people to have a better perspective on what kinds of things might influence a decision. And number 3, I'm really hoping that people that plan the next NATC and the next and the next and the next watch this video and take a look at where the Taiko conference started, where it's going, and then decide, do you want to continue some of these things or maybe change course? That's why. Now, before I jump into the data, listen, if you've made it this far, if you haven't run away screaming from the terms data and analysis, why not give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, let YouTube know this is good content, and hopefully we'll recommend it to other people in the Taiko community. More knowledge is better than less knowledge, right? And you can always hit subscribe too. Couldn't hurt. I want to start with the data that I actually have the least amount of, but when I presented it to the NATC committees in the past, I think it's had the most amount of impact, and that's demographic data. Let me start by asking you a question. Every conference, we always have new people who have never been to an NATC before. What percentage of the conference do you think are new people? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50%? Take a guess. What do you think the percentage is? It's 40%. 2 out of every 5 participants at a conference on average, are brand new to a conference. They don't have anything to compare it to, and generally, they're a bit overwhelmed, albeit in a good way. Now, we'll come back to this in a minute, but I want to move on to the second demographic point. When it comes to how many years a person has played that attends an NATC, which do you think is the largest category? Is it less than 1 year, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, 20 to 30, or over 30 years? Which of these categories do you think is the largest? The answer is between 1 to 5 years, followed closely by 6 to 10 years. You'll notice that the data here is presented in ranges rather than a single number. Without going into detail, I couldn't do a weighted average here because of the way the question was worded in the past. So you have ranges. And if you take everyone who's been playing between 1 and 10 years, that's half to 2/3 of the people who are at an NATC. Cool, but what do we do with this information? Let me ask you another question. Imagine you're in charge of the next NATC. You get to choose the format, the structure, the scheduling, the pacing, the vibe. You get to choose the workshop instructors. You get to choose what they teach. You have total control. Now, factor in that you have 2 out of every 5 people new to conference, have never been, and 50 to 66% are 1 to 10 year players, kind of the beginner category. So how do you make a conference where the large minority people are just new to conference, new to Taiko, while also getting people who have been to multiple conferences to come back? Because a lot of those people are thinking, I've been to enough conferences, there's nothing left for me. You want to get those people. You also want to get people who have been playing for more than 10 years, maybe more than 20 years. How do you have workshops that address their skill levels and their interests? And these are just 3 categories. There are more when you look at other demographics. So it can be really important just to understand that NATC is trying to address different audiences in different proportions that may change from year to year, from conference to conference. And while you may have critique, even valid critique, of how things are being run, sometimes people are just doing the best job they can. Next up, I want to talk about the instructors. A conference cannot and will not happen without enough participants, but the participants go because of the instructors. Take a look at this chart and you'll see how many instructors per conference were new to teaching NATC. Now, 1997 was the first year conference ever happened, so of course, all the instructors there were new, 100% of the 9 instructors. But then you can notice over the years, you had less and less new instructors, even if you might have more actual instructors. This makes sense. Then there's a slight uptick and then it goes back down. Then another uptick and it goes back down. If you look at 2019, you can see that only 15% of the instructors were new. In 2019, I was on the workshop selection committee along with a few other people. And one of the things we really wanted to do was try to get new instructors in to the NATC instructors pool. But you can't squeeze blood from a stone. If you don't have new people signing up and trying to get their workshops vetted, we can't select them. It ain't gonna happen. But this is where 2025 came in strong. In 2025, 61% of the instructors were brand new to teaching NATC. That's awesome. That is amazing. That still leaves room for the people that have been teaching for a long time, those who have so much information and so much experience to give the community. And it still leaves some room for people who are in the middle, who aren't quite either category. People like me, who have a large following, people who teach niche skills like shakuhachi or shishimai, the lion dance. I think that 61% looks really, really good. And I think it was one of the reasons why people really, really enjoyed the 2025 conference. It's not that you always have to have a lot of new instructors. Sometimes having people who have taught a couple of workshops is just as good as people who have taught no workshops. You're still getting a lot of fresh, new-ish ideas and new material. But when you look at the data, you can see trends. And then you can see things that may or may not be a cause for alarm. So who knows what will happen next time over the next couple of conferences. But I have a feeling it will drop drastically and drop drastically again. And then maybe in the future, perk up again as the next generation of instructors makes their debut. Another question for you. Of all 138 instructors that have ever taught even a single workshop at NATC, who do you think has taught the most? Could it be PJ Hirabayashi? Could it be Tiffany Tamariuchi? Maybe Kenny Endo? Heck, maybe it's me. I mean, I've taught a lot of workshops. Maybe it's me. I'll give you a hint. It's not me. The answer, Kenny Endo. Kenny has taught 33 workshops across all 12 conferences, far more than anyone else. Now, I have to say the number of hours a person teaches is way more valuable than the number of workshops they teach. I don't have the hour data. Unless I get a lot of free time or a burning desire or get paid to do it, I probably won't go there. The reason is if I teach 4 2-hour workshops and you teach 1 8-hour workshops, we've both taught 8 hours. It's the same amount of instruction. But I have 4 workshops and you only have 1, so it looks like I've done more, right? So it can be misleading. Having said that, it can still be really useful to look at how many instructors have taught how many hours on this chart here. On the left side of this chart are the names attached to how many workshops each of those people or groups have taught. On the right side is just the numbers of instructors and how many workshops those numbers have taught. I'm going to give a shout out to each of those instructors who have taught 10 or more workshops. And when I'm done, I'll tell you why. Kenny Endo, Marco Leonard, Tiffany Tamaribuchi, Ringtaro Tataishi, Seiichi Tanaka, Christy Yoshiro, Shoji Kameda, PJ Hirabayashi, yours truly, Adam Weiner, Chris Bergstrom, Man Mui, Russell Baba and Jeannie Mercer, and finally, San Jose Taiko. The reason I'm singling these groups and people out is because they have proven by doing 10 or more workshops that they can teach and teach well. They're being invited back to conference again and again and again. They are proven, guaranteed quality workshops, almost no matter what they're teaching. And it's not to say that the people who I did mention, maybe someone who taught 9 workshops, can't do just as good of a job. But 10 or more, to me, that proves something. And if you are at all able to take a workshop with any of these people, whether it's at a conference or anywhere, I highly recommend you do it. And yes, I know my name is on the list, but even if it wasn't, I would still say the same thing. But it's more than just, hey, take these workshops because these are great people. All of these people that I mentioned have been playing Taiko for a long time. They've been teaching Taiko for a long time, which means, relatively speaking, they're not going to be teaching and playing as long as some of the other people. So the opportunities might be more limited than you think. Maybe I'll wait till the next conference. Maybe I'll wait till the next conference. By then, they may not be teaching. You may have lost your shot. So as much as you can, seek these people out. Take their workshops if they are at all of interest to you. And if you know of a workshop happening somewhere where you have friends or other groups, tell them to take those workshops. You're not just helping those people, you're helping the Taiko community. And before I leave this chart, I want to draw your attention all the way to the right, which has a large column that says 38 people have only ever taught 1 workshop at conference. And I'm just curious as to what happened. There's all kinds of stories and all kinds of reasons, and I'll never know, you'll never know. But this is the kind of thing that makes me curious. Now, granted, some of them were from this past conference. Remember, 61% of all the workshop instructors were new this year. But many of them taught more than 1 workshop, which means they wouldn't be in this column. Still, this is what data can show. It starts the questions rather than just ending them. Our next section is all about the workshops. Like I said, there have been 569 workshops across all 12 conferences. It's a lot of workshops. And to make the information a little easier to digest, I have created 8 different categories that I've been using to analyze for quite a while. I'm going to list them alphabetically and give you a quick explanation of what they are, and then we'll move forward. There are energy workshops, which deal with ki and ki, sometimes breath work and voice work. Sometimes they're about stage presence and connecting with the audience as well as the other members on stage. Then we have fue. This is any sort of Japanese woodwind. Takebue, shinobue, shakuhachi, etc. Next, movement and dance. This category is all about how to move the body more efficiently, more effectively, maybe with more ergonomics, but not so much focused on striking or hitting the drum. You could also have workshops that are about learning, say, a folk dance or a style of dance. In the musicality category, you have soloing and improv, sometimes more broad, sometimes very specific, like hachijo solos. But you also have different types of rhythms, like Afro-Cuban rhythms for Taiko, Brazilian rhythms on Taiko, and sometimes even workshops that are really focused about the different sounds that you can get out of the drum, the different nuances that you can create. For the percussion category, pretty self-explanatory. All narimono comes here. Kane, shekere, chapa, etc. And the song category is pretty self-explanatory too. You are either learning a whole song or parts, sections of a song. And then there's the technique category. Anything that helps you play better, faster, stronger, with more efficiency, that goes here. As well as anything focused on a particular type of taiko, like odaiko, okero, shime, that falls in the technique category. And finally, other. Other is a catch-all category. This is for workshops that don't fit any of the above categories, like teaching taiko for kids. Doesn't really fit anywhere else. But also a workshop that might have more than one of those categories, like something teaching musicality and movement and energy. Well, I don't want to just pick one, so I'm going to put it here, make it its own thing. There are also discussion sessions that are basically conversations and dialogues and questioning without a lot of playing. I do want to mention it here, but I'm not putting that into the analysis in this video. Now that you have those 8 categories to choose from, which one do you think has the most workshops in it across the last 12 conferences? Could it be song? I mean, every conference seems to have more and more and more songs to offer. Maybe it's other. Like I said, other is a catch-all category. If I couldn't figure out what to do with it, I put it in there. Could be a lot. It could be something you don't expect either, like fouet. Turns out it's technique. There have been 177 technique workshops of the 569 total. That's 31% of all workshops, basically a third. But that really shouldn't come as a surprise, given that we're Taiko players. We go to conference generally to get better. And if you look back at the demographics I mentioned, a lot of newer people, those are the ones generally more interested in developing their technique, and the ones who have been around for a long time are kind of like, yeah, this is how I play. I mean, that's my theory anyways. But technique is not the interesting thing here. Musicality is. Musicality is the second most common workshop category. It comes in at 19% of all workshops. Now, song comes in a close third, but you'll see why musicality is a little more interesting here. Because I had just done work with the 2025 numbers, I realized that something stood out. So I put them side by side, and you'll see what I'm seeing. On the left, you'll see the full 12 conference spread. On the right, just 2025. So let's look at technique. Okay, 31 to 33%, pretty darn close. Musicality, oh wait, 6% in 2025. That's a huge difference. What about the rest? It turns out every other category, except for musicality, is within 3%. So the 2025 to the full 12 is almost the same. Musicality is drastically different. So I dug deeper. What you see here is a heat map, and there's a lot going on. It's very colorful. We're not going to go into the weeds here. I'm just going to talk about a few things, and then if you want later, you can pause the video and do some research of your own. So look at the top right corner. It says 2025. That's the column for this year's conference. One cell below that, it says 23%, and it's a very bright green. Bright green means that the percentage of that category's workshops were more in that year, and bright red means the percentage of workshops in that category were a lot less. For example, 23% of all technique workshops were offered in 2025. But if you slide all the way to the left, in 1997, you'll see that only 1% of all technique workshops were offered in 1997, because there were only 9 workshops then versus the over 100 that were offered this year. It makes sense, right? So look at 2025. Realize that there were more workshops taught this year than any other year, and it makes sense why there's so many high numbers, so many of those numbers in green, except for musicality. And that again makes me wonder, what's going on? I don't think anyone can answer why musicality sort of peaked in the middle and then it's kind of tapered off over the years, but I still have some questions whether or not they can be answered. Number one, are people submitting less musicality-based workshops to the committee? Number two, is the committee deprioritizing musicality-based workshops and promoting the other workshops? Just to be clear, if they are, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could be a purposeful thing, maybe it's not. Number three, is the Taiko community just less interested overall in musicality as a skill? I mean, it could be any one of these. It could be more that I haven't even thought of. Who knows? This is where the data stops answering questions and leads us to asking more. And like I said a minute ago, feel free to pause the video. Take a look at this heat map. You may find some patterns and some trends. Why did this peak here? Why did that drop there? Why in this year? Why this category? Questions that, if you start asking yourself, you will become interested in data analysis like I did. That's how I got hooked. You can start by asking yourself, are you more or less interested in musicality-based workshops and skill development than you were X amount of time ago, a week ago, a month ago, 5, 15 years ago? You can answer that question, and it may not give you a lot of data, but it's a good place to start. Our final section about data is on ratings. This is where you don't have the data accessible, but I do. Specifically for 5 conferences from 2009 to 2019. All the workshops in these 5 conferences made up 45% of all workshops ever offered. So that's a sizable and reasonable amount of data to make inferences from. For the workshop surveys in these conferences, people were asked a series of questions, and a chunk of those questions had ratings between 1 and 5. 1 would be strongly disagree, 5 would be strongly agree. Most of you have seen surveys and taken surveys like this. So I would take the total score, combine with all the other scores for that particular workshop, and come up with an average number. A 5 would be a perfect score, basically 100%, an A. 4.5 would be 90% as a B, 4 would be 80% as a C, and so on and so on. Of the 254 workshops, how many of them do you think got a perfect score of 5.0? 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, or 5%? Take a guess. How many perfect scores were there? Turns out just 2%, which is 4 workshops across 254 total. Now, getting a perfect score is insanely difficult. The instructor has to be on fire teaching the material, handling all questions, all problems, and resolving them to great satisfaction. They have to have excellent time management, and they have to be doing it with an energy, a vibe, a mannerism that is just captivating to everybody there. Because if one person gives one score like a 4.5, that drops from a 5 to a 4.99. So 5 is incredibly difficult. 4 workshops, 4 individual instructors have achieved that. No one's ever gotten more than 1. And while I wish I could tell you who those people were, I can't. But I can tell you this. All 4 of them are still teaching. So I hope some of you have or will have some of those perfect score moments as you keep taking workshops. Let's take a step back from those 4 individual workshops and look at all the workshops that I have ratings for. Now, what you're seeing here is a box and whisker plot. There's a lot going on, but I'll tell you what you should be looking at. On the very top is the line at 5.0. This is the highest score. This is where you have those 4 workshops. Down in the middle-ish section, you have another bar. This is the lowest score at 4.06, essentially a C. I'll talk about the little dots below in a second. In between those 2 bars is a big, long blue bar with an X in the middle. This is the average. The average is a 4.66. So think about it. The average of all these workshops taught was a 4.66, which essentially is a B+. That's pretty good. That's pretty good overall, I would say. Now let's talk about those 7 dots on the bottom. There are actually 13 of them, but some are overlapping and you can't see them in this way. Those 13 workshops are considered outliers. They're considered statistically flukes. In some data sets, outliers are thrown out. Like there's too few of them, there's errors, I don't really know what to do with them. In this case though, each of those 13 workshops were actually taught to actual people who actually did not have a great time. So I cannot in good faith dismiss them. But in terms of the data, that 4.06 is considered the low number. In actuality, that bottom workshop is a 2.57. That was not a great workshop. Who knows why? I've had bad workshops. I've been to bad workshops. Bad is subjective, but it happens. What you have to realize though is perspective. Those 13 workshops represent 5% of all the workshops taken in those 5 conferences. 5% compared to 95%? 95% is above a C. That's pretty good, especially factoring in that 4.66 is the average, that B+ average. Overall, the workshop instructors are doing a good job. So while you and I would not want to be in one of those bottom workshops, I think we can pat ourselves on the back, at least a little bit. Finally, of the 8 workshop categories I've mentioned, which one do you think has the highest rating, the highest number? There's no way you're going to know this for sure, so you might as well just guess. Close your eyes, throw a dart, pick a category, pick your favorite color, whatever it is, take a guess. And the answer is percussion. Percussion workshops have a rating of 94%. On the bottom is Fue at 90%. But again, perspective. The bottom, the worst rated category is 90%. That's a B. That's really good. And the difference between bottom and top is only 4%. They all live in the 90% range. So there are workshops that people struggle in. There are workshops that instructors agonize over, oh, I could have done better. And sometimes things don't go well. But overall, the workshops at North American Taiko conferences are doing really, really well. Doesn't mean we can't ask for more. Doesn't mean we can't raise the bar and raise expectations. But taking a step back and looking at what was, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty happy with it. So for like the 2 of you who have made it this far, thank you and congratulations. Your head is now full of NATC secrets. But what's the point of this video, really? Like I said, all of this information that you now know was unknown to anyone. And it shows that there is information. There's more information out there, some I don't have access to, that somebody could dive into and get even more perspective and more answers and more questions for. It is incredibly valuable to know where we have come from as a community through the lens of Taiko Conference, where we are now, and what happened along the way. That perspective is priceless. That's where the questions can be asked. That's where some questions can be answered. Last thing, if there was information in this video that you found shocking or surprising or fascinating or whatever, realize it's just some data. There's a lot of data that I don't know about, that you don't know about. And some of that data informs NATC committees into what decisions they make, what they decide to do or not do. And while it's perfectly valid to have critiques about what is and isn't being done, hopefully this video and the just awareness of all that data out there helps give grace and sympathy and perspective to those of us who do attend conferences, who do teach, who do volunteer, and find things maybe frustrating or confusing at times. Because realize, the people that are making NATC happen are doing it because they love the art and they love the community. They are making this amazing event happen. Data can help, but it's the people that matter. So I'm guessing that was more information than you expected to get, right? You're welcome. But if you have comments, questions, context you want to add, anything that you resonated with, feel free to leave comments below. I love engaging with my audience. And if you don't feel comfortable asking publicly, you can email me tictactaiko@gmail.com. Until next time, keep on practicing and be well.